Franchise mode has been the backbone of Madden for years, and in Madden 26, it's still the one mode that feels like it has some heart. The problem? EA quietly removed the ability to play as an owner, and honestly that kinda stings. No more managing the full financial side of the team, no more making those big all-field decisions beyond the coaching sphere. Like, I can't relocate my franchise if it stinks. We can finally make that British team that no one actually wants. For longtime fans of the mode, that's a big piece of replayability and that's now gone.
You can now create your own teams, albeit through EA's Team Builder website, and import them into your franchise to create your own custom leagues. I mean, that's a huge addition that the fans have been asking for years now, and they finally gave it to us.
But the animation-heavy gameplay results in a game that not only feels repetitive, but also out of your control overall. The same usual ball trajectory issues are present. You can't drop a pass in a bucket like you could in All Pro Football 2K8. A feature I wish we had in franchise mode is Create a Play. It was in the first ever Madden, John Madden Football. It was in Madden NFL 04. Why has it been gone for over a decade now? If you're playing franchise mode as a coach, which is now the only option because they removed owner's mode, why not let the user do what a coach actually does? Which is draw up plays.
Hello there everyone, welcome back to another Broly 555 TV game review video. And as you can see from the title and the thumbnail of today's video, today we are going to be reviewing Access Football 2026, the newest Access Football game and the first one to be released in the last 2 years. As you can see from the thumbnail of today's video, we're going to be answering the question of whether or not Access Football 2026 is a Madden Killer. But I will not answer that question until the end of the video. Instead, I'd like to start by giving you the list of the pros of Access Football 2026, the good things about the game. And then after that, I'm going to be going through the cons of the game. Now, in past reviews, what I would do is I'd go through the pros of the game, I'd go through the cons of the game, and then I'd have a third section where after I gave my final score, I would give suggestions on what could be improved on the game for the next Access Football title. This year, however, I've decided to basically fuse the cons and the suggestions together into one section. So when I get to the cons list, you'll notice that I list a bunch of cons, but I'll also be giving suggestions on how Access Football can improve their game from here. With that being said, let's go into the pros and cons of Access Football 2026. First up on the docket, the graphics of Access Football 2026. Due to the extra year of development time that they gave themselves, the folks at Access Studios rolled out new player models, more detailed fields, more detailed crowds, and more detailed stadiums. Now, I know that they rolled out new player models because when you look at player models in the team selection screen, and when you go to the instant replay feature that's in the game and you do a close-up on the player models on the field, you'll notice that not only are the player models more detailed than in previous games, not only is the lighting better than in previous games, which the lighting was pretty good in Access Football 2024, but you'll also notice that the visors are now transparent and you can see actual faces on the players, which you could not do before on Access Football. And the nice part about having this instant replay to check out the graphics of Access Football is that it helps answer the question that the Access Football community has had for a long time. Are these graphics actually good or not? The problem in past games in the franchise is that because there was no instant replay and because the cameras were so zoomed out, you really couldn't tell whether or not the graphics of the game are actually good or not. Well, I'm here to tell you, now that we have instant replay and now that I'm using my own eyes to judge the graphics up close and personal, What I have discovered and what we as a community for the Access Football community have discovered is that the graphics in Access Football 2026 are actually good. This is easily the best looking game in the Access Football franchise. It may not be as good looking, visually speaking, as Maximum Football or Football Simulator or any of the football games put out by EA Sports, but anyone who says that the graphics in Access Football 2026 are bad, they are lying to you. They are not being honest about what they're looking at. There's a bunch of new stuff in the presentation department of Access Football 2026. Now, one of the things that people who have reviewed Madden 26 have given the game praise for is the game's soundtrack and having a bunch of the songs that used to be in older Madden games, as well as just a nice variety of really good popular songs from popular culture. While this is definitely a good thing in Madden's favor, you may be looking at Access Football 2026 and its small soundtrack of 5 licensed songs as being insignificant. However, all 5 of the licensed songs in Access Football 2026 that play in the game's menus come from my favorite band and arguably the greatest Christian rock band of all time, Skillet. That's right, ladies and gentlemen. The super popular Christian rock band, Skillet, licensed Access Studios to use 5 of their songs in Access Football 2026. And fortunately, the folks at Access Studios got the license to some pretty darn good songs by Skillet. So as you're going through the menus and you're checking out your franchise stuff as a GM, and you're checking out the creative team and the creative play and the creative playbook, you will be literally jamming out to some pretty hardcore Christian rock music. Some of the best music I've ever listened to. And so while the number of songs on Access Football's soundtrack may be small, the quality of those songs is really, really high. I would argue that this is probably the best menu music that has ever been put into a football video game. You'll also notice in the presentation department that when you start up a game, whether it be on Play Now or whether it be in franchise mode, you'll notice that there's a new pre-game music track that plays right as the game loads up and while the camera is panning around the stadium prior to the coin toss. This is something that was not in any of the previous Access Football games and is a welcome addition to the game's overall presentation. Another huge improvement made in the presentation department, and you could argue it's part of the graphics department too, is that the folks at Access Studios use AI to generate portraits of player pictures, the experts who pick the games and pregame menus, and the people in the stands. They used AI to make AI-generated portraits, and they made photorealistic pictures of people. So that means when you're looking at a player's picture in any kind of stats menu or any kind of stats pop-up that comes into a game, or you're looking at the pictures of the 4 experts who predict how a game is going to go down before you play it, or you use the instant replay to zoom in on the crowd models as much as you can, you'll discover that all the faces in this game look like real people. They used AI to make photorealistic looking people, and honestly, they do look like real people. Actually pretty amazing. It's very, very similar to the kind of player profile pics that used to be, and I think still are, in Madden games. Another big addition to the presentation department, and you could argue audio as well, is that we have new color commentary. So the 2 guys who did the NFL 2K games, who have been doing commentary in Access Football games, I believe from Access Football 2017 all the way through Access Football 2024, those guys and their commentary are gone. They brought in some guy named Andy, I can't remember his last name, but he's the guy who actually did the play-by-play commentary when Access Football did eSport tournaments over their Twitch channel a few years ago. And so they decided to use him to do brand new play-by-play commentary lines. And oh my gosh, What a dramatic improvement. Andy's lines are smooth, they're fluid, they're not robotic like in previous Access Football games with the color commentary. But more than just being smooth and fluid, you can hear the energy and passion in his voice, like he really cares about what's going on the field in the game. I also noticed that when he makes comments about the action on the field, he accurately responds to what is going on the field. So when a player breaks a tackle, he'll say he broke a tackle. When a holding penalty is called on defense, he'll say, well, holding penalty on the defense. Or a face mask is called on the defense, he'll say, oh, face mask on the defense. And if a holding penalty is called on the offense, he'll say, well, holding penalty was called. Now, there were a couple occasions in previous commentary for Access Football where they did this, but it was few and far between. But this guy does it almost every single time it happens on the field, which makes the game feel more alive to me. He also calls out player names when players make big plays. He'll call out tipped passes and turnovers as they happen. Just basically, this commentary is really smooth and fluid, and it accurately commentates on what's happening in the game. Compare that to a game like Maximum Football, where they have color commentary and a play-by-play guy, and they sound smooth and fluid and they don't sound robotic. But half the time when they make comments on the game, it feels like they're not even watching the same game as you because the commentary is so off from what's happening on the field. Not so in Access Football 2026. When the commentator comments on the action on the field, he rarely ever, if ever, makes mistakes. And so because of that, I would argue that the play-by-play commentary in Access Football 2026 is at least the best in the indie football scene, if not the general football market. New to Access Football 2026 is dynamic crowds, and there's a lot to unpack here. So when it comes to crowds, it's not just a visual redoing of the crowds and all the people in the crowds having photorealistic faces for the first time ever. It goes into the audio portion as well. Crowds sound more realistic than before, and they're a lot louder than before at the baseline level. What you discover then is that when the home team makes big plays or scores, the crowd bursts out into even louder cheers and applause than they do at the baseline, like you would expect in real life. And then when it's a close game and the road team has the ball on third down, the crowd will not only get louder like they would in real life, but occasionally they will even start chanting defense really loud sometimes, giving the illusion that there's a home field advantage for the home team in this game. And I say illusion of home field advantage because technically there isn't anything going on like a shaking screen or shaking play art for the road team that would make it harder to play on the road than at home. But the audio of the crowd gives the impression that there's a home field advantage for the home team, which is something that Access Football has never had before. And so that's a huge positive in that department. You'll also notice that if the home team is trailing by a lot and then they do something like drop a wide open pass, the crowd will sometimes start booing the home team. And then what happened this year in Access Football 2026 is that they brought back a feature that hasn't been in Madden for over a decade: dynamic crowds. So what you'll discover in franchise mode in Access Football 26 is that if you're doing good as a team and you're successful on the field and you're winning games and you're a contender, your home games, your stands will be full all the time. But if you're a struggling team or if you just flat out suck and you're playing a home game, your stands will be half filled. So there's dynamic attendance in Access Football 2026, at least in the franchise mode, where it makes sense to have that. This is something that was in older Maddens, and people loved that feature, and then they took it away for no good reason and never brought it back. So an indie studio like Access Studios brought it back in Access Football 2026. You'll also notice on a side note that the colors of the people in the stand have changed in Access Football 2026. In past games, the people in the crowd would have random colored shirts and clothes, and you couldn't change that at all. But in Access Football 2026, the colors of the people in the stand will be determined by the colors of the team. So almost everyone in the stand will be wearing clothes that are the color of the home team. Something that is an obvious detail you would expect to be in every football game that comes out, but it's something that was not in Access Football until now. Now, let's get to gameplay, where there are a lot of new additions as well as some fixes. After being requested by fans for many years, Instant Replay was finally added to Access Football in Access Football 2026. There are no in-game instant replays like you would expect in a broadcast on TV, but if you hit the pause button, you'll see there's an instant replay option in the menu, and you can use the instant replay to your heart's content to watch the big plays you just made, or if you're just using the instant replay to create highlights for your YouTube channel, or if you're using the instant replay simply to look at the player and stadium models closer and to appreciate the detail in them. There's a lot of different things you can use the instant replay for, but it's been missing from Access Football for all these years until now, and is a very welcome addition to the game. You'll also notice in Access Football 2026, and you'll know from their developer vlogs and blog posts up until now, something that Access Studios decided to do for Access Football 2026 is they actually scrapped all their plays and playbooks that were in Access Football 2024, and they rebuilt everything from scratch, and they added a whole bunch of new plays and play types and formations that were not in previous Access Football games and that are more accurate to modern day football playbooks. In particular, run pass option plays, zone reads, and wide receiver screen plays were added to the game. And because those kind of plays were added to the game, there are new animations and physics that were added to the game because of those new plays needing to be implemented into the game, as well as new AI logic in order for those plays to be effective. You'll also notice that there are new physics and animations for quarterbacks handing the ball off to ball carriers, and these new animations look lifelike and smooth. They're very good. You'll also notice that there's a ton of new player celebrations that were added for after big plays, turnovers, and scores. So if you liked the celebrations of players after big plays in Access Football 2024, the ones in Access Football 2026 are mostly new as far as I can tell, and they just look really good. You'll also notice playing the game that AI pass defense, at least when the CPU is playing each other, is a lot tougher than in past Access Football games. Also, user control has been an issue in football games in general in the modern era, and Access Football decided to add a level of user control that was previously not in their games. In Access Football 2024, all of the tackle breaking moves were done automatically by the AI. Basically, it was almost random, and you had to cross your fingers and hope that your ball carrier could break a tackler in a one-on-one situation. But now, in Access Football 2026, there's something you can do if you're a ball carrier and if you're a defender that can increase your chances either of breaking or making the tackle. Right before a tackle is about to happen, if you're the ball carrier on offense, you will be prompted to press a button that will give you a temporary boost in your tackle breaking attribute. And if you time it right, you'll get that temporary boost and you'll stand a much higher chance of breaking the tackle. And if you're on defense, you do the same thing. That prompt will come up and you hit the button at the right time and it increases your chances of making the tackle. Another thing that Access Football 2026 does to give users more control over the action is they actually changed the different pass types in the game. In past Access Football games, you threw lob passes, bullet passes, and normal passes based on the AI essentially deciding it for you based on where you were trying to throw the ball. But in this game, you actually have control over what kind of passes you want to throw. If you want to throw a normal pass, you just hit the icon above the receiver, the button that is. And then if you want to throw a bullet pass, you hold down that button icon. But if you want to throw a lob pass, basically put the ball over the defense in the bucket, you press the icon button twice, and it does a lob pass. So even though these are not gigantic improvements in terms of user control, these new additions to user control in Access Football 2026 are a welcome change. They are a definitive step in the right direction for the Access Football franchise when it comes to giving users more control over the action. Another thing you'll notice is that there is now an Access logo, which looks like an X, under all players who are rated an A- or higher. These X's underneath these players does not give them any special stat boosts like it would in games like NCAA Football 07, but it is good to know who the star players are on both sides of the ball so that if you're on offense, you know which defenders you want to avoid if at all possible. And if you're on defense, you want to know who the impact players are on the other team's offense so that you can key on them and try and make the other guys beat you. One glitch that was fixed in Access Football 2026 is the forward progress glitch. In past Access Football games, if a wide receiver caught a pass right at the first down line, but then he got hit by a defender which triggered a tackle breaking animation, and then that receiver was tackled immediately 2 yards behind the line from where he originally caught the pass, the game would mark him down 2 yards back from where he actually caught the ball, and forward progress would not be honored. It was a very frustrating glitch. Thankfully, they fixed that glitch in Access Football 2026, so if you catch the ball at the first down line off a pass, and then you get hit and you get sent back 2 yards by an animation and then you get tackled, you will not get marked 2 yards back, you'll get marked where you first caught the ball. That is a glitch that was in previous Access Football games that finally got fixed. Another thing that had been plaguing Access Football was the ineffectiveness of the onside kick play. And what Access Football decided to do is they decided to scrap the onside kick altogether, and they decided to implement the onside kick alternative that spring leagues like the United Football League have been implementing. Instead of attempting an onside kick, you are given the ball 4th and 12 at your own 28-yard line, and if you convert the 4th down, you get to keep the ball. This new feature is great for teams that would traditionally be going for an onside kick to try to recover the ball because you actually have a chance of getting the ball back after getting the score with this new conversion feature instead of the old Access Football onside kick where the receiving team always recovered it no matter what. And par for the course, we have new features in the team customization section of Access Football 2026. When creating a team, you'll notice now that you can set which stadium is assigned to your team. So there's the 25 stadiums that are unique to certain teams in the game, as well as a stadium that is dubbed as Classic Stadium, which is basically a modernized version of the original stadium from Access Football 2015, for those who like to get in touch with their Access Football roots. So you, when creating a team, can actually set which stadium is the default stadium for that team when they play at home. But the big thing that was added to Access Football 2026 in terms of team customization features was they finally added a feature that has been missing from Madden since Madden 12, Create a Play. This is also a feature that has been long requested by the Access Football community and is now finally here. Now, to be fair, Access Football is not the first indie game to have Create a Play in it. Maximum Football 2020, back when Canuck Play was its developer, they had Create a Play. And the indie football game Football Simulator also has Create a Play. And it's similar to what Access Football has. The difference is that Access Football executes the Create a Play better than those other two indie games. You have a lot of different assignments and options that you can give people depending upon which position on the field that they're in. And because there's a lot of different formations to make plays in, you have a lot of different possibilities for making a playbook of your liking. And this really enhances the coach mode part of Access Football. For those of you who don't know, in Access Football, if you don't want to play the games yourselves, you can actually enter coach mode and you can coach the games. By that, you do what you used to do in NFL head coach. Basically, you call a play, and then the AI takes control of your team and tries to execute your plays. And so that's the beautiful part of Access Football 2026. Now you can create your own plays on offense and defense, which means you can literally draw up your own plays, then you put all those plays together in your own custom playbook, and then you can call your plays to be ran on the field in coach mode, and you can watch your team try to execute your plays. This gives you the full head coach experience in Access Football 2026, an experience that you may have gotten in NFL head coach back in the day, but you have not and have never gotten that experience in any of the Madden games, past or present. And because of the fact that you can now create your own plays, when you go to the custom playbook section of team customization, where you go to create your own playbooks, you'll notice that there's a new section that says custom plays or created plays, and that is where you can actually take the plays that you created in the play editor and put them in your playbook. However, despite all these new additions to presentation and gameplay and team customization, the folks at Access Studios did not forget their bread and butter, the franchise mode, and there are new additions to the franchise mode aside from dynamic crowds. Now, in Access Football 2026's franchise mode, users have the ability to control the quality of the randomly generated players available in the draft pool. So if you go through the first season and you feel like the players in the draft pool for the upcoming draft were either overpowered or they were really underwhelming and you want more talented people in the draft pool in the future, you can literally change the strength of the draft pool to either produce more talented players or less talented players depending upon your preference. Basically, you can make them all cupcakes, or you can make them all a bunch of generational players, or somewhere in the middle. That kind of user control and setting up a franchise mode is wild. I don't think anyone else in the football market has done that before. Another thing that you can do in franchise mode is that users have the ability to control the quality of the players available in free agency. So usually by default in Access Football, you'll have a couple of all-star level players available in free agency, but then everyone else is like average or worse. So in this particular setting, you can decide whether or not you have more or less talent available in the free agency. Meaning you can decide to make it really hard to sign people and put a bunch of cupcakes in free agency, or you can set it to where whenever you go to free agency, there's always these really super talented players available for you to pick from. Or you can do somewhere in between because you have that option. Also, new to the franchise mode this year is that CPU teams can now offer you trades, and there is a setting in the franchise mode settings when you're setting up a league, and you can determine how often they offer you trades, and I believe you can also determine by adjusting the setting of the kind of trades that they will offer you. The good news is that you can change all of these franchise settings, with the exception of league formats, anytime you want in the brand new franchise settings tab that is next to the edit teams tab in Access Football 2026's franchise mode. So this allows you to change the talent level of the draft pool and the free agency pool and all the CPU trade stuff whenever you want, as well as all the other settings that you can change. And if you are one of those people who looked at Madden 26 removing the owner's mode from their franchise mode and wondering if you'll ever get another football game that does that, well, Access Football 2026's franchise mode has you covered. Access Football 2026's franchise mode has had owner's mode since, I believe, Access Football 19, and it hasn't gone away. So you can do all the GM kind of stuff that you used to be able to do in owner's mode in older Madden franchise modes. So you manage your team's finances, you can make repairs or upgrade stadium and facility equipment and stuff, and you have control over the practice schedules and how hard and often you practice, and you have control over practice squad, and you have control over depth chart, and you have a team draft guide that actually helps you with drafting players during the draft and helps you with scouting players during the season, because the team draft guide not only tells you areas of need on your team and which players in the draft could best fit those needs, but they also have a section that says best available in the draft, and they tell you which position on your team it is that those guys could replace. So there's a very robust franchise mode here in Access Football 2026. It has all of the features that I listed in my review of Access Football 2023 and 2024. So literally it has all the same stuff plus the new stuff I already mentioned, making Access Football 2026's franchise mode the best franchise mode on the market, especially since Madden removed Owner's Mode from Madden 26. If you're someone looking for a football game with a franchise mode that has Owner's Mode, you want Access Football 2026. Now that I have gone through all of the pros of Access Football 2026, let's go through the list of cons that I made about the game. One con is that player movement is slower than Access Football 2024. Now, to be fair, some people might not consider this to be a negative because some people thought the player speed in Access Football 2024 was too high and they were welcoming of the slower player speed in Access Football 2026. However, if you're used to the faster player speed in previous Access Football games like I am, and then you play Access Football 2026 where the player speed is definitely slower, it can be a little weird at first. But if you jam up the game speed setting and the game settings all the way to maximum, which is 1.10, then the game speed is something close to what it was in Access Football 2024, and for me that is my preferred game speed. Now, the animations and the physics in Access Football 2026 are for the most part smooth and fluid and look lifelike, but there are occasions where the animations and physics, especially on tackles, can be a little wonky at times with player clipping and players bouncing off of the ball carrier in a way that's not quite realistic. Some of that stuff can be cleaned up to make it look even more lifelike. That's a definite con in the game, I would say, but something that can be improved upon. Fair catches are something that are still not in the game and needs to be, because if you play Maximum Football, the new one, you got fair catches in that game. And virtually every great football game that has ever been made in the past has fair catches in the game because fair catches are a fundamental thing in football. Every real-life football game has fair catches going on punt returns and sometimes on kickoff returns, depending upon how deep the kickoff is. So Access Football not having fair catches in their game is something that is definitely a con, and they need to put that in the next installment. Now, another con for Access Football 2026 is that there is no online play in the game. Now, for some people, this is not a negative because they're offline players like myself, and they just want to play through franchise mode and create their own teams and their own football universes, and that is great. That is beautiful and wonderful, and I am all for that. However, at this point in time, Access Football is behind all of their competition. Not only does EA's Madden franchise offer online play in Madden 26, not only does EA's College Football 26 game offer online play, but even the main competitors in the indie scene offer online play. Mutant Football League offers online play. Maximum Football, the new one, offers online play because they have Ultimate Team, their version of it, and then they also have head-to-head exhibition online play. Heck, even Football Simulator recently added online play to their game. Not having online play can definitely be viewed as a con on Access Football 2026, even if you're someone who's not going to play online play at all if it was available. Even if you're just someone who likes to do offline franchise like me, not having online play is a con simply because everyone else in Access Football's part of the football gaming market has online play. Another con for Access Football 2026 is that there is no practice mode in the game. And this, frankly, is a con no matter how you slice it, because just about everybody else in the football gaming market has a practice mode of some kind. Madden has a practice mode. College Football 26 by EA Sports has a practice mode. Maximum Football has a practice mode and player drills that you can do. Football Simulator has a practice mode. Legend Bowl and College Bowl have practice modes. Mutant Football League has a practice mode. I think Sunday Rivals is the only game other than Access Football that doesn't have a practice mode in the football gaming market. But that makes sense because Sunday Rivals is so easy to pick up and play that you don't need a practice mode. Access Football, on the other hand, is a lot more complicated of a game than Sunday Rivals is and would really benefit from having a practice mode for players to play in and practice the controls before they throw themselves into actual games. Another con for Access Football 26 is that user control, while it is improved from previous years, is still not where it needs to be in order to compete with games like college football or Madden or Maximum Football even. Another con for Access Football 26 is that while the user control is better than in previous games and is definitely a step in the right direction, they are still lacking in user control for players and ball carriers compared to games like Maximum Football. So there definitely needs to be even more user control added to that, specifically with when to stiff arm people, when to truck people and break tackles, stuff like that. Another con for some people in Access Football 26 is that while being able to create your own play is a nice feature, you can't actually create your own formations from scratch and then create your own plays within those formations like you could in all the PS2 Madden games. Instead, it's more like the PS1 era of Madden games and NFL Game Day games where you have pre-made formations that you can create plays within. But the ability to create your own formations and create a play is something that Access Football will need to add to take that feature to the next level. Now, thankfully, there was a time like a year-ish ago, maybe sooner than that, where I saw Danny Hugan, the lead developer of Access Football, talk about how there is plans in the future to be able to create your own formation as well as your own plays in Access Football. So I think that will come fairly soon in the future. And lastly, as I mentioned earlier in the video, even though the graphics in Access Football 2026 are easily the best in the series, and even though they are definitely good graphics and they are not bad graphics at all, they're still not on the level of Maximum Football's graphics, Football Simulator's graphics, Madden's graphics, and College Football 26's graphics. Or even Mutant Football League's graphics, which Mutant Football League is a great game graphically. So even though Access Football 26 still looks good, their graphics are definitely behind the industry standard when it comes to the kind of football game they're trying to create. So in the future, after they've taken care of the other things that definitely need to be added first, like practice mode and online play, graphics definitely need to be updated in Access Football moving forward. Now, we have the score of Access Football 2026, my final verdict. And before I tell you what the score is and break down each of the categories, I want you to know something. I am judging this game by indie game standards rather than AAA game standards. Why? Because Access Football only have a handful of people working on the game on a very limited budget. They don't have a big developer team, and they don't have endless trunks of money like EA Sports does to create their game. So it's unfair for me to hold them to the same standard as EA Sports simply because of that. Although in the future there will come a point where I'll have to start judging Access Football by AAA game standards because their game will be that high of a quality. But on with the actual score for Access Football 2026. When I look at gameplay, I give it a 9 out of 10, which I gave to gameplay in Access Football 2024 in that review. But the on-field gameplay is definitely better than Access Football 2024. More user control, they fixed some glitches that were really annoying in Access Football 2024. And adding all the new plays like the RPOs and the zone reads and the wide receiver screens definitely make the on-field action a lot more fun than previous Access Football games. You combine that with the fact that there's coach mode if you don't want to play the games, and the coach mode is very well executed. And then you add in the fact that you can run the franchise mode like a football manager game and not even play or even coach the games. The gameplay in Access Football therefore gets a 9 out of 10. Graphics, I give an 8 out of 10, even though the graphics in this game are definitely better than in Access Football 2024. Much better lighting and shadowing than in Access Football 2024. The player models are more detailed and the lighting really brings the details out. And the fact that you can actually see the faces of the players on the field through their visors and the fact that they don't look half bad is pretty significant. I also like the fact that there's photorealistic faces on each and every person in the crowd in the stadiums. And the real-life ads that play on wall banners and on video boards in the stadiums is also a nice touch. So yes, graphics are definitely an 8 out of 10 in this game. When it comes to sound, I give this game a 9 out of 10. The pre-game music is a nice touch, and the dynamic crowd sounds that are very accurate in situations where they're supposed to be accurate, that is definitely welcomed. And of course, the color commentary by the new play-by-play guy is very well done, sounds very lifelike, very energetic, is accurate to what's going on the field, and there isn't too much dead air, despite the fact that it's only one dude. So I give the sound a 9 out of 10. Now, when it comes to presentation, I give this a 9 out of 10. The only reason I did not give this game a 10 out of 10 in terms of presentation is that the menu layouts are exactly the same as Access Football 2024. Literally, the only thing that's different is that they changed the color of the uniform of the guy that's in the menus from red to green, and they changed the title of the game up in the corner. And they added a little start screen at the beginning. But other than that, the menu layout, the menu UI is exactly the same as Access Football 2024. That's the only thing stopping me from giving this game a perfect score in the presentation department. The skillet music in the main menus is absolutely amazing and banging, and really makes navigating the menus in franchise mode, makes creating your own plays, creating your own playbooks, and creating your own teams that much more fun. Plus, the immersive environment that's created through the dynamic crowd sounds, especially when they're cheering loudly on third down and they start chanting defense and they start booing the home team if the home team's sucking it up. That kind of stuff is dynamic for presentation. So because of all that, I give the presentation for Access Football 2026 a 9 out of 10. And then, of course, I give the replay value of this game a 10 out of 10. And you might be thinking to yourself, how can you give Access Football 2026 a 10 out of 10 on the replay score when you yourself admitted they don't have online play or a practice mode? Well, it's really quite simple. The franchise mode in Access Football 2026 is so deep, and the team customization tools are so deep. You can make all kinds of leagues of various sizes and formats. You can play them, you can coach them, you can just spectate all of them. You can create your own teams and replace each of the default teams in the game. You can literally make your own playbooks. You can literally make your own plays. There's just so much to do with what's there in Access Football that even without having online play and having a practice mode, there's just so much to do in Access Football. Especially if you do a franchise mode where you're in the tier system, you literally have to play 3 full seasons at least in order to win the Tier 1 championship. So there's a real replay value to the game that just comes with having a deep franchise mode that's really good and having these really deep team customization options, especially now that you can create your own plays. This is just amazing stuff for the replayability of the game. And so, because we're judging the game by indie game standards, I'm giving Access Football 2026 a 10 out of 10 in the replay department. Now, when you add up those numbers and divide by 5, the final score that I give Access Football 2026 is a 9 out of 10, which is the highest rating I've ever given to an Access Football game. Now, if you're looking at my score that I gave the game and you're thinking that that's way too high, remember, I'm judging Access Football by indie game standards because it is definitely still an indie game. If I were to judge Access Football by AAA standards, I would probably give the game a 7 out of 10. Maybe a 7.4 or 7.5 out of 10. And even then you might be thinking that's too high, but I don't think you guys really understand what you're dealing with here. Access Football's gameplay, for better or for worse, is very similar to Madden's, but they have even more user control and realism than even Madden's gameplay offers. They have a really deep franchise mode that cannot be topped by any other game on the market. The only thing that even compares to Access Football's franchise mode at this point is the Dynasty mode on Maximum Football. But that's a college Dynasty mode, which is a whole different animal than a pro franchise mode. And the team customization options on Access Football, from the ability to create your own teams and create your own field art and create your own playbooks and now create your own plays, as well as creating all your uniforms and all that, the depth of the team customization tools in Access Football is deeper than anyone else on the market. Yes, even deeper than Maximum Football. Maximum Football might have a lot more options for team customization when it comes to players with their individual gear, and they may have a lot of options for creating uniforms too, but when it comes to everything else, especially the ability to create your own plays and playbooks, Access Football is second to none when it comes to the football gaming on the market. So because of stuff like that, even if I were to judge Access Football 2026 by AAA standards, I would still give it a 7.4 out of 10. But because I am giving this game a judgment based on indie game standards, my final verdict for Access Football 2026 is a 9 out of 10. Now, to end this review, we're going to answer the question that is on my thumbnail and that I asked in the beginning. Is Access Football 2026 a Madden Killer? The answer to that question is, it depends on what you're looking for. If you're looking for a game with modern cutting-edge graphics, online play, and a practice mode to work out the controls and figure out how the game works before you throw yourself into actual games, then no, Access Football 2026 is not a Madden Killer. However, if you are looking for a game whose gameplay is fluid and smooth and has more user control than modern-day Madden offers, if you're looking for a game with a deep, customizable franchise mode that allows you to emulate several different kinds of leagues in the game, and if you're looking for a game with a team customization suite that allows you to create your own teams and your own playbooks and even your own plays all within the game without going to a separate website, then Access Football 2026 is definitely a Madden Killer. I can tell you right now, after watching CPU versus CPU games on Access Football 2026 and having started to play games for myself on my franchise mode, Access Football 2026 is definitely the Madden Killer that I would be looking for if I was a Madden player. I played Madden 25 on the Xbox One, and that game was boring as heck to me, even though it had online play, even though it had practice mode, and even though it was a way better looking game. Access Football is not boring to me. When I play Access Football 2026, I can feel the passion and the care that the development team put into making the game, with creating an immersive stadium environment, with the new color commentary being mostly accurate, with the smooth, fluid gameplay, the deep franchise mode that gives you all the tools to make all kinds of leagues, the team customization suite to make all kinds of teams, make your own playbooks, make your own plays. There's way more effort and passion put into Access Football than Madden at this point in time. And when you look at from one game to the next, the jump from Access Football 2024 to Access Football 2026 was astronomical. Whereas the jump from Madden 25 to Madden 26, you barely notice it. And with that, this has been another Broly 555 TV game review video, and I will see you in the next one. Ta-ta for now.